Today I am super excited to introduce CJ Drake again to come up and do his probably third Red Couch Devotional, I believe. And every time CJ has came to speak, I've always really enjoyed it. And I've heard him speak a few times in public too. He's a really good speaker. And I know whatever he has on his heart today will be a blessing to you all. So I will go ahead and introduce CJ Drake.
So we're going to be reading out of Exodus chapter 4 today, so starting in verse 10 of Exodus chapter 4. But Moses said to the Lord, O my Lord, I'm not eloquent, either in the past or since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and of tongue. But the Lord said to him, Who has made man's mouth? Who makes him mute, or deaf, or seeing, or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be your mouth, and teach you what you shall speak. And he said, O my Lord, please send someone else. Then the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses, and he said, Is there not Aaron, your brother the Levite? I know that he can speak well. Behold, he is coming out to meet you, and when he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. You shall speak to him, and put the words in his mouth, and I will be with your mouth, and with his mouth I will teach you both what to do. He shall speak to you, to the people, and he shall be your mouth, and you shall be as God to him. And take in your hand the staff with which you shall do the signs. We may know Moses from the end of his time. We see Moses at the end of his journey leading over 2 million Israelites to the promised land. But I want to take a step back from that a second. I wanted to start at the beginning, because the beginning was a little bit rocky for him. Looking back to the first part of Exodus in the Bible, we see this account. The Pharaoh of the Egyptians saw the people group the Israelites as a threat, and instead of allowing them to be as they had been for the previous however many years, he saw them as a threat, and he took a hold of them, and he placed them in captivity, and he enslaved them. And as part of that, he wanted to kill the firstborn child of every Israelite so that it wouldn't continue to grow, as there were already over 2 million people. And it turns out that Moses was an Israelite. He was a firstborn of Miriam. So in order to save his life, Miriam put him on a boat, put him in a basket, and sent him down the river to save his life. And by God's grace, the Egyptians took him in. The Pharaoh and his wife took him in. So keeping that in mind, that was the environment that he grew up in with the Egyptians. He was raised in that lifestyle, but one day he was out and about, and he saw one of the Israelites being abused by one of the Egyptians, and he didn't like it. So he, out of anger, went and killed the captor. Well, obviously that didn't sit too well with the Pharaoh, so Moses fled to the wilderness to escape his life. And after some time in the wilderness, we see this amazing interaction with God and Moses. Moses was out and about, and he walked up the mountain, and he saw a burning bush. But the burning bush wasn't being consumed by the fire. He walked up, and he had this interaction with God, and it was the first time that Moses saw what God had for him, for his life. His reaction, it wasn't the best. He tried to make an excuse, but on the surface, it seemed like a legitimate excuse. I love God's response to him. His response was, Why are you making excuses? I'm the one who created you. I'm the one that knows you. I created your mouth. I created everything about you, so I know you. So why are you making excuses? That's the thing with God, isn't it? He doesn't care about all the irrelevant excuses we could try to come up with, but he does require us to be faithful. So why do we make so many excuses? I mean, if you're like me, excuses are something that come pretty natural. And most of the time, it's pretty petty stuff. For example, it's sunny out there and I know I need to mow my grass. Well, my excuse is, well, I work hard, I can just push it off till later. Or I see that the trash is full and I say to myself, well, it'll still be there 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes later. And when I was in college, that was my big thing, was making excuses. And for those who are in college can probably empathize with me. We may try to flower it up by saying it's procrastination. But the reality is that I wanted to make an excuse for my time and push off schoolwork, push off doing work until it was like 1:30 in the morning of the assignment being due the next day. Call it procrastination, but really it's just making excuses. Maybe you're like me and you struggle with making excuses. And while those are pretty trivial examples, how many times do we try to make excuses with God? You know what, God? I know I'm supposed to read my Bible in the morning. I know I'm supposed to spend the morning in prayer and your word. But, I have a big day today. I have fill in the blank. How many times do we try to do the same thing with God? Have you ever found yourself saying that? Or, I know I'm supposed to be a witness for you, God. I'm just too busy to be a witness. I'm just too busy with life's busyness and craziness. All these are just excuses. All these are irrelevant excuses with God. And on the one hand, it's sad how our passage ends. Because this is exactly what Moses does. He tries to give excuses with God. And on the one hand, it's sad how it ends. But on the other hand, I love how it ends. Well, let's first talk about how it's sad how it ends. It's sad because even after God reassures Moses that he's in control, Moses still tries to make excuses. Well, making God feel bad for my speech impediment didn't work, so let me resort to begging. He begged God not to send him. That's sad. Look, if God's calling you to something, I pray that you don't push him off. You don't beg God to send somebody else. Because he will. The reality is that God will accomplish his work with us or in spite of us. And that's the exciting thing. That's the thing that I love about this passage is God's grace. That Moses learned this the hard way. But God's grace is so great, and I am so thankful for it. After Moses begged him not to send him, God very well could have just said, okay, I'm moving on to the next guy. I'm going to focus on Aaron, and he's going to lead the people. But God showed Moses grace. And this time, instead of arguing with it, instead of trying to make more excuses, Moses was obedient. But it angered God. It angered God that Moses didn't trust him in the first place, the first time. I don't want us to make the same excuse. That's how I want to end. God is a very gracious God. But don't take that for granted. If God is calling you to something, whatever it is, I pray that you be faithful the first time. Pray that you wouldn't make excuses. I pray that you wouldn't beg God to send somebody else, because the reality is that he very possibly will. Be obedient. Don't make irrelevant excuses with God.